Okay, so welcome. Today we're going to explore why it's beneficial to have more VCSE organisations working with the public sector here in Devon. Public sector is part of the economy that comprises of all organisations that are owned and operated by the government. They employ loads of staff and give out multiple contracts and commission services for the public. And this includes everything from schools and wellbeing services to maintaining the verges at the side of roads and county farms. With the intersecting crisis in our economy for health and wellbeing of our communities, and with climate change and ecological crisis, many understand that now more than ever, we want spending our public money to bring more value. So when organisations in the community and social enterprise sector are able to win public sector contracts, this means our taxpayers' money is spent on local jobs and other community benefits, rather than distributing shares to distant shareholders like some utilities. That's my introduction. So a little bit of housekeeping. So we'll be recording the sessions. If you want to turn off your video, then please do so in the bottom left-hand corner. This does not include breakout groups, so everything you say in there won't be recorded. So just a quick overview of the agenda. We'll have a short time slot for introductions, and we will hear from panel speakers with a short Q&A. And then we'll hear from Deborah Steele at Devon County Council, and then head into some breakout rooms for discussion. So before we start, does anyone have any particular needs? You can put your hand up or write that in the chat. No? Fantastic. Thinking about it, I'd just like to say a very special welcome to those who have joined us today to share their experience. Martin Slocum of 361 Energy, the community energy company in North Devon, which has a quite long history of working with public sector. Jane Williams from the Turning Tides project, near where I am, based in Crediton, but working in a number of places. And has done remarkable work with people who've got specific disabilities or autism labels and other issues. And Fiona Carden, the joint CEO of Exeter CoLab, who has done a lot of work involving collaborative work with people with complex needs. So we look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you for attending. And I'd also like to give a particular welcome to Deborah Steele, who's joined us from Devon County Council and is going to tell us later on about some of the changes that Devon County Council is making in its procurement methods and processes to support small and medium enterprises and get more local procurement. So that's really great that you've been able to join us. Thank you. Are we finished with the polls sufficiently, do you think, to start? Managed by Devon County Council in this area, and we're led by the amazing School for Social Entrepreneurs, and we've got partners of Devon Communities Together, who you may know, and Stir to Action up in mid-Devon, and they've been running various programmes for startups and those that are already in business, established. And then there's also the Founders for a Future, which is setting up a load of new co-ops for young people with Stir to Action. So yeah, do go and check out the webpage, which I'll put in the chat if you want to find out any more about those other programmes. That's great, thank you. So there's quite a lot of energy being put into the social economy at the moment, and we hope that will bear fruit. It's particularly difficult in rural areas, which is where some of you come from and where I am at the moment. So that's quite a big need. So I'm going to go around the participants. It's probably easier if I just invite you individually to say a little bit about who you are and where you're from. So just going around my screen in no particular order. Ella, do you want to introduce yourself and why you're here?
Hi, so I'm Ella. With one hat on, I am a community developer working at One Barnstable, or in One Barnstable. So I'm hosted by NDVS, and I recognise the office, Martin. So lovely to see you. Yeah, so supporting community groups and organisations and services, provisions and community members in Barnstable to all work together. I'm part of NDVS, which is obviously our CVS in North Devon. But with another hat on, I'm also looking into and setting up a CIC, because there's clearly a lot of stuff going on around at the moment with social enterprise. And I think I'd be missing a trick if I didn't, especially when my job is always fixed term from one year to the next. So it's about the future. And I think it's about inspiring children. My daughter's 10, so showing her what could happen in the future as well. So I'm here with 2 hats on. It is my day off. I have the official hoodie on. So thank you.
Thank you, Ella. Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Catherine West. I'm the founder of Significant Seams, a social enterprise set up to build community and support people in vulnerable life moments. In practice, we're an art for mental health organization, and we deliver well-being workshops, and we offer sewing supplies for social good. We are known internationally for our work in the space of craftivism and giving vulnerable people voice in big issues, but we work quite hyper.
Yeah, and I'm just going to quickly share a slide that we should have shared earlier in a moment about the funding. I don't know if you want to quickly.
I'll let you get the slide up, Roxy, if that's okay. In a minute, we're going to also go around and say which organisations we come from, and maybe just a sentence about what we would like to get out of the workshop. Do you want to introduce the slide, Roxy, and just the whole programme that this is a part of?
Yeah, so this is a programme funded by the UK Community Renewal Fund, managed by Devon County Council in this area, and we're led by the amazing School for Social Entrepreneurs, and we've got partners of Devon Communities Together, who you may know, and Stir to Action up in mid-Devon, and they've been running various programmes for startups and those that are already in business established. And then there's also the Founders for a Future, which is setting up a load of new co-ops for young people with Stir to Action. So yeah, do go and check out the webpage, which I'll put in the chat if you want to find out any more about those other programmes.
That's great, thanks. And I'm now going to hand over to our panel to talk to us about their experience of working with the public sector. And you might want to say more about your organisations and what you do. So I'll hand over first to Jane. Would you like to speak to us?
Hello. I've written myself some notes, and then I've done that thing while you're all introducing yourself. I've written myself a load more things because of you talking about other things I'd like to say, but I'm going to try not to say too many of those, or else I will overrun my 10 minutes. So things to bear in mind before I start talking. I talk a lot and I talk quite fast. So if you want to interrupt me, just make it really obvious. And that's the other thing. There is a dog by my feet and the postman has just come. She will stop any second. Holly. Yes, please, because I'm just speaking. Can you take her outside? Okay, that may be all right. She was asleep until that moment, but you know, that's life, isn't it? So I'm Jane Williams. I'm the director of the Turning Tides Project. The Turning Tides Project is a community interest company which I set up almost exactly 8 years ago. The aim of the Turning Tides project is to make equal access to music, the arts, and everything that makes life a life worth living a reality for people with learning disability or autism labels. So I've got quite a lot in common with several of you in the room. And Teresa, I think you emailed me already, didn't you? Yeah, cool. So that's really good. In terms of how we do what we do, we always seek to demonstrate a social model approach. And I'd love to talk a lot more about that, because some of the things that I've heard a few of you say already, what the social model says is that what disables people is the way that society excludes them from equal opportunity. And actually, if we all had access to the same things, you might be a person that was different, but you would not be a disabled person. And we're all part of society. So we all have a responsibility to change that, to make that different. Things like, you know, autism hours and I have a consultation group that meet on a Tuesday, which is a big room full of people with and without autism and learning disability labels. We quite often get people, public sector organisations and lots of other people come and pass their ideas through us to get real feedback from real people about how they feel about things like autism hours. What I know is that if the guys were here, what they would say is, well, so, you know, why am I excluded the other 23 hours of the day? So that's where I've come from, and I'd love to talk more about that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to talk about being a CIC and my engagement with the public sector. So everything we do seeks to demonstrate a social model approach. We have 2 rules in the company. That's one. The second is we don't say yes to anything that we think won't be fun. So, and there's lots of reasons for that. Firstly, life's too short to do stuff that's boring. And secondly, we all learn more, we all communicate better if we're having a good time. So there's very few things, I think, in the world that are inherently boring, but those are the ones we say we're too busy for. Most things you can make fun if you go about it in the right way. When we take on opportunities, what we do is seek to demonstrate. So I never take on things that are specifically for people with learning disability labels or people with autism labels. What we try and do is identify need in our community and then provide a solution to that need. So that what we're doing is saying, okay, so we're a big gang of people with and without learning disability and autism labels, and we've got a solution to your issue. And we use that as a way of going, we're valuable people, and given equal access, we contribute and we make a difference. So that's who we are, that's what we're about. In terms of our business, the Tiny Tides project is quite a big business now. It's actually probably a bigger business than I ever imagined or possibly wanted it to be. I wanted to change the whole world. I wanted to have a business that was small enough that I knew everybody that was part of it really well, and we all cared about each other and we knew how each other ticked. At the moment, probably, I don't know, 300 people in any month are part and actively a part of the Tiny Tides project, and my paid employed staff group is about 20 people, 50% of whom are disabled people with an autism or a learning disability label, and I'm really proud of that. If every business in Devon had a 50% disabled, that'd be crazy, wouldn't it? So we do things like we're members of the Chamber of Commerce, because that's how I changed that bit of the world. We turn up and we go, oh, why aren't you doing this? We're doing this. We could support you to do this if you want to. So that's how you have a bigger impact. I think that's really important. So I tend to say yes to things in terms of public sector engagement, where I think we might have a bigger social impact than we'd have without engaging with them. So there's lots of stuff we do when I see opportunities to be part of something bigger, where we can deliver part of a solution, and people might learn almost by accident what difference it would make if they included people like us, then that's what I do. In terms of the bits of our business that pay, our business is really diverse, and those of you that came to the earlier stuff and seen my film have already heard me talk about that. But I mean, I think that's part of our success, that we will never be an organisation that falls apart because we lose a bit of funding, because we've always got so much going on that one thing dropping in and out doesn't actually make too much of a difference. As long as my business plan is good and we're looking far enough ahead and we're being creative enough, we can roll with the odd one of those. It doesn't actually matter, and I think that's really important. Kind of things we do. So music, the arts and life. I'm an occupational therapist by first profession. I'll talk about that a bit in a minute. I'm also a professional musician. So where the Turning Tides project started was with music making, band creation, writing songs, using songs as a way of giving people a voice. So we have a band, and we run lots of music sessions and songwriting sessions and stuff. We took on, partly to store our band instruments, a tea rooms at the station at Crediton, which is now open as a tea rooms and is one of the places where we offer lots of volunteering and supported employment opportunities. And the tea rooms obviously gives us catering opportunities too. So we run a tea rooms locally, which means lots of local people drop in and out and find out about us whether they want to or not. And also it gives us the opportunity to do bigger stuff. We have a shop. Our shop is on Etsy and in the tea rooms, and it's absolutely about recycling, upcycling. So speaking to the things that are issues for this planet, not speaking to stuff that's about being a disabled person, but doing the stuff that needs doing. Because we took on the station, I wanted us to sell beautiful cut flowers outside, because old station buildings should have beautiful cut flowers. So we started a flower growing business. So we blagged a piece of land, which is a couple of acres that we've reclaimed, and we grow our own cut flowers. We sell them at various other places as well now, and we sell them in big metal buckets outside the station, because that's what I wanted to do. That spawned a gardening business, because what occurred to me was lots of older people in the town need a bit of help with their garden, and they know a lot about gardening. So if we want to find out about gardening, that's where we need to be. So we do gardening for lots of people in the town. Again, that's another place where I can create supported employment. So lots of my paid staff do that bit. Project facilitation. So we've run heritage projects, we've run community projects, sports projects, art projects, and some of those are public sector collabs. So I'll talk about those in a minute. We deliver training. So we deliver training on social model, we deliver training that's an introduction to autism, we deliver total communication training. And we also have a research and evaluation team, because I have a background in research. So, and it's a research team that is a group of people with and without labels, so that you don't get any of that stuff about people who have no idea inventing lovely projects for people without involving them. The next question I was asked was, how did I get into working with the public sector? Well, I think there's a couple of things to say about that. The first is, as I've said, I'm an occupational therapist. I worked for years for Devon County Council. Mostly my AT experience and my management experience was local authority. And then I ran the learning and development service for social services for a while. And so when I started doing my own thing, the world I knew was local authority. So it was kind of inevitable, really, that I would want to engage with that world, and also that I probably understood that world reasonably well already. And I think that's important. And the second thing in terms of my engagement with the public sector is, it's never on my list. When you look at the list on my disc, it never says, Turning Tides Project's going to engage with the public sector. I don't actively seek to do that. We do what we do and the things that we believe in. When I see common agenda, common ground, an opportunity, then yes, I might take it. But equally, as we've got bigger and better known, what happens is that organisations see us as a useful partner. So I don't have to go looking for it, they come to me. We tend to engage with public sector organisations when we think it will give us a bigger voice, it will make a bigger difference, it will have a bigger impact. I'm going to list for you a few of the things we've done, because they are really diverse, just to give you a bit of an idea of some of the things that we've had contracts for from public sector organisations. Some of them are one-off, so can you deliver this thing? Some of them are long-term contracts, some of them are projects. And again, I think that diversity, having a mixture of all those things, I think is really useful. So our band is good. We write all our own stuff, and we do get hired out. We do get paid to do gigs, and we have performed at DCC conferences and been paid for it. So that's really cool. That's the kind of work I like to do. Our catering service, there's a big important group of Department of Health people coming to County Hall in a few weeks' time. We're catering for that event. So things like that, we're being paid for that, obviously. I have a training contract with Devon County Council. That kind of drops in and out. We'll deliver a round of training and they'll all say it's amazing, and then it'll stop happening, and then they'll reappear years down the line and ask us to do it again. So that's slightly frustrating, but it doesn't matter if you're not relying on that income. If you know what you do is good and you can wait for it to come around again, then that's fine, just let it go. And that's what I do. We did a research project for Sports England, which dropped out of them posting something saying, why don't disabled people want to be coaches? And me being infuriated by that and phoning them up and saying, it's not that they don't want to be, it's that you don't ask them. Your information is completely inaccessible. And so they gave me a research grant and said, demonstrate to us that it could be different if we gave you this money and you ran a project. So I did. So we coach qualified 15 people and said, there. So, and that paid, and it was a really nice project. Did it go anywhere? I don't know that it did. Did it change the world? I don't think so. But it gave us a funded project and it was a nice piece of work. The station tea rooms kind of had lots of knock-on benefits I wasn't expecting. It brought me into contact with all the railway organisations. who I think are public sector organisations. They are completely delightful organisations to work with. I love working with them. So, and they come knocking on our door. Now they know we're there and they know what we do. If they have projects that are happening where they think they need to think about access, they come ask us. And they also ask us to do things like, so there was a heritage project that they wanted delivered at Crediton Railway Station. We delivered that project. We were the lead partner. So they gave us all the money and said, can you work with other organisations and do this? So that's lovely work to do. They funded us to do an accessible travel project, which gave us free train tickets to travel all over the country doing stuff. So we had lots of jollies and also did, I think, a really important piece of research and gave them lots of useful feedback. So we do stuff like that. During lockdown, when everybody else was stuck inside and we were still allowed out, we did some tidying up in Crediton because we thought we should look after the town while everybody else was not able to. And when lockdown started to ease, the town council approached us and said, thanks ever so much for doing that. Do you want a contract? So we have a maintenance contract with Crediton Town Council, which again provides supported employment. We litter pit, we do repairs, we take care of things and we get paid for doing that. So that's really lovely, really like that one. And that one works really well and is a long-term contract, which enabled me to pretty much double the number of supported employees I was paying. So that's just amazing.
Jane, this is brilliant. Have you got much more?
Am I taking too long? That's your polite way of saying I'm taking too long. What else is on here? In terms of funded projects I've applied for these, I do sometimes have an idea and think, right, I'll go and look for funding. That tends not to be the way around I work. We have done that a couple of times with DCC. I have to say I've found that process really time consuming and really frustrating. And one of the things, and I worked for local authority for ages, so I know this, is that sometimes you're on a journey and you think it's looking great, but the whole time you're doing that, you're not being paid. And I think that's one of the things the local authority needs to remember. And then there's a change of, priority or a change, whatever, and suddenly the stuff you were doing runs into a sandbag and goes nowhere and all your energy is wasted. So I've had several of those experiences, and so now I don't apply for, when I get bids invited to apply for things that have several rounds and I don't apply. So in terms of what I think the last question was what I wish I knew before I started. Nothing. I think it's really fun to take the journey and be prepared to learn the lessons. And some of them may have made me swear at the time, but as long as you learn useful things for them, then that's all good. What I think matters is being clear about who you are, being clear about what you do, being really clear about why you do it, and then being flipping good at it, because I think that's just so important. If the quality of what you do is amazing, people will come and look for you because they will need you to deliver some of the things that they need delivering. And I think that's incredibly important. There. Sorry, I overran. Stopping now.
That's brilliant, Jane. Thank you very much. Sounds like amazing work. So we will have time for questions, but I'd like to go now, first of all, to Fiona. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the work you've done in the collab?
Absolutely, yes. And I will, well, like Jane, I could talk about this for hours, so I'll try really hard to keep to time. And I'm very happy to be interrupted and told to sort of, wind it in a bit. I have got some slides which I'm going to share, which is as much for anything. It's for me to remind me to talk to topic and stay on topic. So I'm going to share that, if I may, with you. So hopefully you can see that. Okay, so bear with me a second. My screen's just gone ever so strange.
We can see it though.
There we go. Yeah, that's fine. I could see it on my screen. That's fine now. So just a little bit of background for some of you. I know collab, but a bit of context really. So it's a wellbeing hub. Which is what it was called 6 years ago when we started it. We've never really called it a wellbeing hub. That was the funding that we got from Public Health when we redesigned the building. So in its current model, we've been in about 6 years now, coming up to our 6th year. And it is in the middle of Exeter. It's a co-located building. So it's just behind John Lewis. It's kind of in one of the more deprived areas of Exeter, but very close to kind of some of the wealthier parts of Exeter as well. It's one of those classic parts of the city. And it is a council-owned building, so we rent the building from the council. And it is a co-located space. So crucially, though, it's not a co-working space. It's not just a building that there's a load of people that rock up and work. They actually, what we do is we work as a host to support people to collaborate. So CoLab was an Exeter CVS a million years ago, it feels like, only about 7 years ago, in fact. But we knew at the time, or we saw it on the horizon, really, funding was changing significantly. So we decided to move with the times and look for funding in different ways. And we really, really changed our approach and morphed into what is now CoLab, which is about collaboration and laboratory. So crucially, it's about being able to be creative in that space as well. So we have kind of moved with the times a lot. I think what I want to really emphasize is what I'm going to speak about now has taken us kind of 6 years. It is a long time of experience that's got us to this point of working across sectors. So crucially, what we wanted to do is make sure that the co-located space, the community of CoLab, was representative as many parts of the community as possible. So it is a cross-sector working building. So we do have public sector in there, we do have social enterprise in there, we have charities in there, we have a specialist GP practice as well. So we've got about 30 odd organisations, 30 plus organisations now based in there. And I can never remember them all. And actually, we've just created a brochure, which is now going to go on our website because none of us can ever remember it. It's awful. We're just going to go through the list. But it includes the housing agencies. So we've got VCHA, we've got Devon County Council who are based there. We've got Exeter City Council who are based there. We've got, as I say, we've got NHS through the Clock Tower Surgery, Devon Mind, we've got probation services, we've got Eddiston Trust, we've got the Big Issue, we've got Julian House, Shaw Trust, Women's Centre, Wellbeing Exeter, and that's a few of the organisations. But crucially, we also have what we describe as the sort of the outside CoLab community, the sort of outside the geography of the community. And there's upward of about 100 organisations that we're working with now. And crucially, I wanted to really emphasise that, again, that is taking us out into other sectors. So working with the local businesses. And that's been something the last sort of 2 or 3 years. It's really flourished enormously. But also, so we work very closely with our colleagues in the police. We work with the Scrap Store, with Rethink Mental Illness, St Petrox, Princess Hay, Nationwide Building Society, Waitrose, Libraries Unlimited. There's a long, long list. So you can see what I'm trying to give you there is a flavour of the variety of organisations that we include in what we describe as the CoLab community. So when we talk about collaborative funding and collaborative projects, it really is about across those different sectors. I personally find it quite difficult talking about sectors. I think it pushes us back into those silos, and we try and talk about sort of organisations with social purpose rather than all these different sectors. But the way the world is, we still have to recognise that those sectors exist. So one of the things that we really wanted to do, and I wanted to do in this sort of brief presentation, is to give a sense of what it is that we've done to enable ourselves to be better at that collaboration. So part of the conversation obviously today is to say, how do we work differently? How do we enable ourselves to access funding differently and better? One of the things that we recognised is that as a sector, we needed to change in different ways. I'm not going to say improve, because that's not the narrative that we had. But how do we change ourselves as a sector to enable ourselves to be, and I'm not even going to say funding ready, because again, that's a phrase I can't bear. But how do we enable ourselves to engage differently across those sectors so that we can build those relationships? So over the past 6 years, we've really focused on, as it says on this slide here, creating the conditions for change. So in a way, we see the sort of the CoLab building and the community as a container for that change. And in that container, we enable conversations to take place. We work as it says, the Change for Good NAVCA report, which I think is a little bit old now, but 2015. It talks about progressive infrastructure, which is what CoLab is, as brokers and enablers and catalysts. And that's something that we've really enabled us to kind of have a language around what we do, because infrastructure is a funny old phrase. It makes people think of roads and things, and clearly progressive infrastructure within our sector is not about that. But in some ways, we also are. We're about ways to navigate through the processes. So in some ways, that kind of that road that metaphor is a good one. And that's my phone ringing. I do apologise. Stop that. And so, you know, instead of that spaghetti junction of kind of sector, it's about finding the pathways through that. And we do see ourselves as playing that role. And we've absolutely spent a great deal of time working on the relationships. And again, the emphasis on that time and that opportunity to have those, what we keep calling courageous conversations, where you can have differences of opinion, you can move past those differences into a place where that you can collaborate, you can compromise, but not give up what's needed as well. So there's a lot of time and resource been spent on those relationships, on that conversation. And a little bit like Jane was saying, you know, certainly when the pandemic hit, we stayed open as an organisation. We made that decision, and it was an interesting decision, and it was absolutely the right decision. And partly we did it because the clock tower surgery was there, and they weren't obliged to stay open, of course. But we also saw that lots of other doors in the city were closing. So other agencies and other organisations, so the City Council and the housing and other St Petrops and things, were not able to stay open. So we did stay open. And what that did for us during that really challenging phase of the couple of years was really tested our model. And actually what it did was shine a light on it and enabled other organisations like DCC and ECC and the police and others to see how the model works, and how one of the ways we describe, or I describe our organisation, is that we're like a flotilla of lots and lots of different ships and boats, all sorts of different shapes and sizes within the CoLab community. You've got sort of small kind of little rafts, and you've got all sorts of flexible power boats and all sorts of things, all sorts of different shapes and sizes. And that flotilla of boats is able to respond to the social climate and what's happening outside of us really quickly. So as the wind shifts and the mood shifts and all the things shift out there, and whether it's funding, whether it's the pandemics and things, we are able to respond to that. And that's the difference to when you're comparing it to people, to organisations like Devon County or City County, who are more like tankers, not able to move quite as quickly. And it's not for the want of trying. Most of the people within those tankers would like the tanker to move more rapidly and to be a little bit more flexible. So we kind of use that as a model. And I think what we saw coming out of the pandemic is that our colleagues in those different sectors and in the public sector were able to actually see very clearly the model that we've been trying to describe for a couple of years, but they saw it in action. They saw the rapid response that we were able to offer. And one of the things we go back to as well is about how we use different models and different approaches at CoLab. And we talk about the leader as host model. And some of you may already know Margaret Wheatley and her work, but it talks very much about how we convene and provide opportunities for those conversations, and how we enable creativity and that generosity. And that's something that, again, over time, so my co-joint CEO, Amanda, so some of you will know, she's been doing some work in North Devon, Amanda Kilroy, and I have spent a lot of time, what we would describe as being very generous with our time and our skills and our interests in that development of those relationships. To the extent where, you know, some of our trustees would say, you know, you're giving away such a lot, and it's about that generosity that then is reciprocated eventually. But it takes time, and I think that's, again, I would keep going back to the model of a co-production, and that sort of that enabling relationships does take time. And we've been working on. That's
great, Fiona. You're coming towards the end. If you can just have another minute.
Thank you, Jill. That was very politely done. So it is very much about this. There's on our website, there's lots of examples of the projects which demonstrate this collaborative approach across sectors. So the CoLab community I've mentioned, and again, our brochure will be on the website soon, which tells you about all the different organisations that are working there. Exeter Homeless Partnership, again, the people that were involved in that partnership, we had City Council, we had ECI, we had VCHA, St Petrops. Within the Devon Mental Health Alliance, which is a very new emerging alliance, and the website, the details are there, we have Devon Mind, we have Improving Lives, and it's DPT are devolving that relationship of some of the mental health provision into the community, and that's what we're part of that. And again, with CoLab Women as a project, we work with the OPCC, with ECC, with DCC. There's all those different projects come together. And at the heart of that is the process of collaboration, is the voice of lived experience, and is that opportunity to develop those courageous relationships or courageous conversations that take place within those relationships. So there's lots more I could say, but I will stop there and hopefully we can chat more later.
That's really interesting, Fiona. Thank you very much. We will have a little question slot, but we're going to hear from all three of you first. So, Martin, are you ready to tell us a bit about 361 and your experience?
Yes, indeed. So I'm Martin, I'm from 361. We are in the North Devon Voluntary Services office and share space with them. So 361 is 10 years old. So in that time period, we've specialised, it was set up by a group of individuals who felt there was a need for fuel poverty in the area. So looked at establishing 361, gets its name to the central road, of course, that goes right up through Devon. And we're looking for funding and where that greatest need was. And that's how we really started and got involved with public sector funding. Now, there's lots of bits to that. It does take an awfully long time to build your reputation. But as Jane was saying, it's about doing passionate projects really well and being recognised for them. So all of our volunteers have got great heart for that work. So that's opened up a number of doors for us over the years, a number of different projects and a number of different funding schemes for those projects, which has been great. So we've now built that reputation, and we often get approached now by organisations to say, we need help in this sector. We've got some funding available that we need to kind of use up. Could you deliver that part of the project for us? Which is, again, has been brilliant. So just before COVID, we set up a business side, because as well as affecting families and supporting families in fuel poverty, we wanted to then look at helping the local councils. North Devon and Torres district councils wanted advice and run a workshop on how to reduce their carbon across their portfolio of properties. So we set up a business sector in 361 to just deal with the commercial side. So we support schools, we've done hospitals, care homes as well. But that sector has been really valuable to us because it's helped us help in grassroots in parishes, in helping them with their public sector community centres or town halls. And then they've also gone, actually, if we link up with our health service or with our parishes, we can then be helping our families in the area as well. So that's how really our success and our reputation has kind of grown over the 10 years. So good and bad experiences with public sector. They're frustrating and challenging and great all in the same time. So as the previous speakers have mentioned, they are quite time consuming to actually go through the process of verification and qualification and meeting all of the grants. Most of the time, like Jen said, we only select ones that we fit probably 90% of. That doesn't mean to say that because we are funded solely, we are looking at projects that we can deliver, even if they're slightly off of our core work. So don't be scared of being flexible and adapting what you can offer to a slightly broader market or slightly different sector if you can, if you have the time, if that gives you a funding pot to continue or to survive longer while you're waiting for your next sort of funding stream to arrive. So flexible and being adaptable is always useful, has been useful for us. And again, we've tried to stay true to that core value though. But once we get a project, if for any reason we feel we're not going to be able to deliver the full criteria of that funding stream, the biggest thing with the funders is just communication. Be totally open, totally transparent with who's funding you on that project. It might be for no fault of your own, you can't deliver that project, or you're not going to hit all the key performance indicators, or you're not going to hit all of the outcomes or all of the quantity of people you want to do. that isn't a problem if you communicate your activity, your time. You're accounting for spending somebody else's money, and it's public sector money, of course. So as long as you have a clear, transparent, open communication with the funder and what you have achieved or can achieve within that time frame, then keep those communications open. What would we like to have known before we started is actually having a forum like this, being able to speak to people that had lived it, done it, and got the t-shirt, as a lot of you kind of have. That is really valuable in actually sharing that kind of knowledge. I'd love to have been able to have done this a good number of years ago to not to have to kind of make the same mistakes or to go through the same kind of problems. Also, with the projects that we look at doing, what I find with public sector money, there's a lot of waste in it and a lot of duplication, and that really frustrates me as an organisation. So what we're trying to do, if we've got a project in mind, we look at anybody who's even working remotely in that sector to see what they're doing, how they're doing it, good or bad, and either partner with them, collaborate with them, support them in their work if they want it, and if that partnership has got that synergy and works. Roxy, would you mind sharing that slide for me? So when I moved into Devon 3 or 4 years ago and joined 361, helped to build the business sector, I was actually really confused by the number of organisations working in sustainability in North Devon. So this little mind map is just me downloading kind of all the organisations that I'd come across. It started off literally with 4 circles on it. It was 361, Biosphere, North Devon and Torres District Councils, and Plastic Free North Devon. So it's literally kind of 4 or 5 bubbles. And in conversations, workshops, all sorts of things, this has kind of grown and grown and grown until we realised actually we're all working to that same kind of green economy kind of central core. So the green economy is actually a biosphere department within their structure. So we revitalized that. We've kind of resurrected it and dusted it off. And now we've got a steering group within the green economy group, but we can all collaborate in North Devon around that kind of sustainability kind of sector. And I've tried to kind of colour code it into public sector organisations, voluntary organisations, New Prosperity Devon's in there, as you can see, and that's getting what foundation funding's right. Who's working in the natural environment? Who's working in the built environment? Who's working for special needs? Who's working for poverty? Who's working for homelessness, mental health, well-being? And it just really helped me to kind of clarify when I'm looking now at a project, who do I want on my team to be able to deliver that project? Who's got the special powers, the special gifts, special skills, the staff in the time available that I could tap into to say, Plastic Free, you're amazing at public and social media. Can you be part of this campaign? Biosphere, you've got a business partnership accreditation. Let's talk to your business within your accreditation scheme. Can we get them involved on an event? And then just drawing that together. People love actually being invited to collaborate on a project, and funders love that as well. So funders will look much more favourably at a bid because you've collaborated with specialists in your area to deliver a team project. So that's really, I'd recommend or I'd advise everybody to kind of have a think, who's working in your neighbouring parishes doing a similar thing that you could collaborate in partnership with. Happy to share this if anybody else would like to do a similar thing. That's me done. Julia, on mute.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Martin. That's brilliant. Would anyone like to briefly ask any questions to any of the panel? We will have another little chance to ask questions, but right now I see that there are already some in the chat. I don't know, Roxy, would you like to mention one or two of them, or shall I do that?
I can only see one from Helen.
Okay, Helen.
See if there's others.
do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, happy. So I'll just read it as I've written it there. It saves me going off on a tangent. So we're hopeful, maybe read naive or hear naive, that participating in the inquiry on Tuesday will move the needle in how obesity policy and weight management practices work in the future. So I'd love to hear thoughts on how to proceed as perhaps consultants to influence practice changes in current providers, how to participate in collabs going forward, and not risk handing over our IP unwittingly. So to give a bit of context, we've already received a call from a bid writing company who identified the upcoming Torbay wellbeing imminent invitation to tender, and we've been attending those provider engagement meetings. So there's providers out there that obviously work, some, you know, profit very well from working in a way that we view as causing harm, and that's changing. So, you know, we're very happy for that, of course, who wouldn't be? But yeah, we're sort of like want to be ready. We feel that we are ready. We've put so much work into getting to this part of what we're doing, but we want to know how to really proceed. You know, so any thoughts, if anybody's got any ideas on, you know, they might have already done that for a similar or the same, you know, thing. But yeah, any thoughts really? Any help?
That does raise a very interesting question about the elements of competition as well as desirability of collaboration. Does anyone in the panel want to start with that question? Jane, are you waving? Go ahead.
I'm not. I will answer that question in part, which is I one of the things I put in my thing and didn't say is collaboration, competition. I don't do competition. I don't see competition. I see lots of people that do different things and bring different things. And I think if you know what you're bringing, then it's just really important to just be true to that. Because of, I think there's a thing about scale. So for me, when we were a much younger organisation, we did much smaller projects. As I've bid for bigger things and we've got involved in bigger things, that's kind of because that's where we've arrived and they don't feel big anymore. And I think that's important. Have I along the way got burnt a few times because I've thought that, you know, I've got walked into a forum where the other players are all bigger and actually what they've done is walked away with my ideas? Yes, possibly. And what I think about that is if the ideas of our organisation are good ones and what I want to do is to change the world, then I have to see even that as a positive thing. And I think that's what Fiona was saying about generosity. If giving that away means a bigger player does exactly what you would have done if you'd been bigger, then that's great. And obviously there's a reality bit in there because you've got to pay your bills and your organisation needs to stay afloat. But I'm inclined to think if what you do changes things, even if you never get any of the credit and you don't get any of the work, then that's a really, really good thing. And you should just be really proud of that and keep going, and people will see who you are and stuff will start to come back to you.
Yeah, and I think that we do all that anyway. You know, we know that we will never measure 99% of the impact that we have, and we're at ease with that. And you're right, if all we're after is change, then if it happens without us being credited for it, or, you know, it's not about that. It's just how can we practically build? Is it through consultancy and being very transparent about it? Because in effect, what we would be doing is we'd be creating future competitors. But we're happy to do that because the change is happening. So, but I don't want to diminish all the work that we've put in. You know, we didn't come this far just to come this far. You know, we've come this far so we can be a better version of what's currently available. So why should we not get, you know, paid for that? I just wonder, you know, I get what you just said there, Jane, thank you. But I want practical advice on, you know, how you would do it. Would you set it up as a consultancy package? You know, how would you price that consultancy package? You know, how would you market that consultancy package? Yeah, that sort of thing.
That's another lot of big questions, isn't there? Did anyone want to add, Fiona?
Yeah, really happy to. I think I really echo what Jane was saying there. You know, we've been burnt, we've stepped in, and all sorts of different stories I could share there. But I think it's difficult without knowing a lot of detail, Helen, about what the organisation is and the size and how you want to grow and things. And I think it is always good just to really sit down and talk to anyone and everyone who'll listen to you and ask them those questions, as you're doing here. And I think anyone who'll listen, ask the question again and again, because someone will connect with that. And I think there's something about being a little bit courageous about saying, I do value myself and therefore I will be paid to do this. And I think there is something about us as a sector that and I still see this actually, because we do work with a lot of smaller organisations that we support and nurture, and that don't always put their worth forward, and are a little bit reluctant to say, actually, no, you will pay me £500 a day for consulting, and that is perfectly reasonable, whatever it is that amount is. And I think that is a little bit of a legacy of our sector, and I think that still exists to an extent. And I think that works both ways. I think there is still a sort of public sector idea that the voluntary sector does things for free based on volunteers, and that volunteers don't cost anything. Now, I think everyone in this room knows that that's not true. So, but I think there is still that narrative is still being played out. So there's something about just being able to call it out, to call out those challenges, that courageous conversation stuff, which again, I kind of keep coming back to, but it is about those spaces to be honest and bold about what it is that you're trying to achieve, and to step into those spaces with allies as well. And I would say about talking to, is there a way of creating an alliance of interested organisations who have a similar vision in mind, or align with each other in similar ways? And again, so the alliance that we've got with Devon Mental Health Alliance, for example, there's all sorts of different organisations in there. We're actually a really small part of it. And we bring a very a distinct skill set to that relationship, and there are lots of other bigger organisations within it. So I know that the experience and the conversations we've had over many years with the public sector is about how they best connect with the voluntary sector or the third sector or the VCSE effectively. And I think there's something about that alliance model brings a strength of voice. So there might be other organisations that you could connect with to say, right, how can we bring ourselves to the table so that we have a bigger presence there? There's kind of about that numbers. I don't know if I'm helping, Helen, or making it worse for you, but I know what I'm trying to say in my mind,
You might, it might be of interest to know that in this programme, there is a little bit of funding for one-to-one mentoring as well. And if any of you are interested in that, please do ask us afterwards, or email us, whatever. Catherine, did you want to say something?
I was just going to thank everyone for, grappling with Helen's quite tricky question, but actually is at the center of things, I'm sure, for many smaller organizations. And wanted to add that piece about, I think many of us come to things like this with that same spirit of generosity and wanting to be part of things. But I think it is also, it is hard when you are on the inside of a network. And in this case, I can say that is the case with the Significant Seams Artists Network. To know how to get into or be part of that. And for much of our sector, and Significant Seams, what I didn't say before is we are in fact all freelancers. None of us are employees. We don't have the funding for us to be employees. So it's often an exceptional thing for us to even attend this meeting. We might be invited to come to a meeting as collaboration. We might be invited to have a stall at an event. But it is actually considered and treated very often in a way that's actually quite patronizing to people who are doing really meaningful on the ground work, that gift is being given, but actually it's coming with a huge expectation without any appreciation of the cost or work that goes into it. And that it's actually an exceptional thing for much of the social economy to have funding to sit at that table for that collaborative conversation. And while I absolutely love and completely agree with everything Martin was saying about being frustrated about the level of waste we very often see on the public sector side, there is also that moment, like one of the things that's been transformative for our group since the pandemic actually is our need for contact and the numbers of requests we were getting from people in mental health fragility from our Arts for Mental Health practitioners who in the course of 2 to 3 days lost a year's worth of work, so their own fragility was coming to the fore, was we very early on decided we were going to kind of keep meeting with one another. And if at all possible, find some funding for that. So we prioritize 2 hours twice a month online via Zoom. But at a barely minimum wage, just to make sure everyone was able to physically participate, we funded that. And in stark terms, that's around £6,000 a year. And for an organization that is striving to have almost no overheads or has a baseline of very, very low overheads, that's massive. And I think the public sector doesn't fully appreciate that aspect of the social economy, that the baseline that someone who is in a salaried employment comes to a discussion with isn't there. And I think, but the innovation, the efficiency, the cleverness very often is, and I completely agree with everything Fiona said about actually how we need that space of graciousness and we need that space. But that is one of the things that is hardest to come by in the social economy. And so I just felt like I really wanted to put a kind of point on a flip side that is completely supportive, but saying if some of this is about talking about the real challenges, not only all the positive energies of the social economy, collaboration takes a level of redundancy in numbers of people there, and actually when we don't have funding for one person to go to the meeting, let alone to go to lots of those meetings and have multiple organizations doing it, I think requires a little bit of a shift and a valuing of that time. In the same way you're suggesting to Helen, we need to find a difficult but very clear-minded for our own organization sense of where to invest our time.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Catherine, for that observation too. So now I'd like to just say 2 things. We've taken a little bit longer over this session and it has been worth it. This is a really important question to consider. Moment to Deborah to tell us a little bit more about how Devon County Council is responding to this situation and working with procurement and processes and support structures for local businesses. And then we'll go to Gareth. So over to you, Deborah, for your observations.
Okay, hi everyone. So first hat I've got on is as the project manager of Get Set to Tender, which is a support package that we've pulled together from Devon County Council recovery monies to support small businesses, small enterprises to get that first dose of working with public sector. So it looks at the introduction into public sector, where you go, where you sign up. So you can look for those opportunities, or you can wait for those opportunities to be announced to you by the various portals that we have. Then we're also working within the organisation of Devon County Council to change how we approach our commissioning, in terms of that we go out and we find out and we have a little bit more information into terms of what we want to commission, how we're going to achieve that from potentially people that we want to work with, and then look at it from that way. So we've been fortunate within business support, when we've commissioned our business support, we've been able to do them as commissioner-led supports. So we know that we want to work locally. So all of our support has been with local Devon businesses. We've not commissioned outside of the immediate area. We've made sure that that support goes into the Devon businesses and therefore into the communities, hopefully. And that's what we want to try and embed as much as we can within the organisation, and just also look at the procurement teams that we work with, not as a transactional, that they just bring it all to bed, and that they access the portal and they do this, they do that, that they give us real sound advice and saying, you're not actually building something into that commission that you're doing. You're not having, okay, the cost is great, but what else are we delivering? We're meeting the outcomes of the individual intervention, but what else are you doing with that support? How is our money, the public spend, benefiting that piece of work and the wider communities? So that's what we're working to achieve that within the organisation at the moment. And the Get Set to Tender support programme is just one small step to do that, and to encourage individuals, organisations to get onto the procurement portals and be ready for those opportunities as they come out, as we put them out. And so I'll put the link to the programme in the chat, and then anything else, just please feel free to ask me. If I can't answer the question, I'll point you to the relevant Devon County Council person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah. That's really good to hear. So I'm going to pass over to Gareth. Do you have some observations? You have been involved in both bidding for contracts and also on occasion assessing them. So is there anything you want to say?
Thanks, Jo. Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty much all been said, I think, before, but a couple of things for me. I mean, as I say at the introduction, thanks to what you just said, Jo, I've applied for tenders on my own right. As iridescent ideas, we've won tenders, we've not won tenders, we've gone in joint bids, we've gone in partnership bids, we've subcontracted, done a lot of things. And we did some workshops in North Devon, and one thing came of that also was interesting was recently I got invited by Plymouth City Council to be a sort of external evaluator of tenders with them. It's quite strange, but it gave me a really insight into how the council sort of viewed and assessed these sort of tenders. And we know in the discussions we had in Barnstable and in Campden, some of it is really obvious. It's like, don't ever make assumptions as an organisation. Always assume the person reading it doesn't know anything about you. We had, there's loads of examples I can point to here, but we had 3 bids for you. When one of them, the best bid was actually outside of Plymouth. We wanted to make the contract to a Plymouth-based organisation, but the best quality bid was outside Plymouth. So there's always like tensions around. This one's the cheapest. That one's a bit more expensive, but it's got great social value. And there's all sorts of different things pulling in different ways. We had another one where it got kicked out before it even got to the tender stage, even though it was a brilliant bid, because it failed on a red flag on some financial issue, like in the governance. And the legal team was saying you cannot give a contract to that organisation, even though we kind of wanted to, because they were really good. There's always factors that come into play around sort of tendering and commissioning. I mean, we talked a bit about why bother go for these contracts. There's some questions for me. It's like, well, do what Jane does. Go and take your own business and run a business. Go and apply for a grant. Contracts is quite a, it's in that journey you go on. You may not go to contract straight away. You may take several years before you're ready to think you could apply for a contract. Then you might go into partnership, and that's a good way to start and be subcontracted. But there are, there's billions of pounds spent by the public sector in the economy, and billions of pounds that could be useful for your business to make a profit from. Contracts are often extended if you successfully deliver on it, you can prove the impact, social value, and just delivering the specification, you might get a contract rolled over. And the other bit was touching on Helen's comment about the sort of consultancy side of it and the almost like pre-commissioning phase. I'm quite a big fan of, it's a great quote, and I can't remember who said it, and I can't exactly remember the quote, but it was along the lines of, pretty much all public services as we see them now will want campaigned for by a charity. So I'm a big fan of our organisations getting out there in almost like a pre-commissioning, pre-tender, pre-contracting stage, getting our information out there about what's needed in the sector. And to use my example of business advice for social enterprise, we argued for a long time, 5, 6, 7 years ago, with the LEP, like Enterprise Partnership, and the Council, of this need for sector specialist social enterprise support. We just kept banging on as much as we could. And eventually, whether the LEP got bored of us saying it and gave in, but they actually then put a contract out there for that business advice which we won in partnership. So if you've got a specific issue, you know, people have argued for prison reform and social care reform and all these things over hundreds of years. They are now part of our sort of the warp and weft of public life because people argued for them. So it's about networking, becoming the go-to people for your service, building trust, be involved in consultations. Helen, going to the House of Commons, brilliant. What a great thing to market and advertise about you becoming the leader in your field, in partnership, in relationships with all the other people you're involved in. Talk to the politicians, absolutely. Get involved with the councillors, the MPs, invite councillors to your events and meetings. You know, get in the media with the issue. There's a really great example of Surfers Against Sewage, who had a solution for sewage, which was ultraviolet treatment, and they just drove it up the media agenda. And eventually politicians had to take notice, which led to, you know, councils having to fund better sewage treatment. It's another example of that campaigning and advocacy, which can lead to these contracts and commissions, but it's very long term. It can take months and months, years of work, you know, and how do you got to pay the bills in the meantime. So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
And I think my experience of doing tenders, just quickly, I think it's things like, you know, getting all your stuff in order, being really fit for purpose in terms of your good governance, clarity of purpose, clarity of vision, mission, all the financial projections and policies and procedures in place, which all these barriers make it quite hard for small organizations to engage with. So then the partnership approach might be really useful, or subcontracting might be really useful. So yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity. It can be a great opportunity, and it can build loads of kind of great work for your business.
Thank you so much, Gareth. That's really good. So we need to go into further breakout.
That's all right, Jill. Really, really quickly, I just wanted to give a really quick example, if I may, of talking about things taking time and really building what Gareth had said. I'm just really quickly going to share a picture with you, if I may. And so some of you, is that sharing? Can you see that? So some of you will know Sidwell Street and Colab and where it is. So the alleyway opposite, this was yesterday. But it's taken me 5 years of working across projects, across different organisations, including City Council, County Council, to have about 1 million conversations around how we have an art-based project based in the alleyway. And the whole purpose of that is around reducing antisocial behaviour in the area. And there's a whole raft of reasons why it's a good thing to do. It's done by community artists. And yesterday we had basically anyone who walked past down the alleyway was given a paintbrush and a pot of paint, and everyone's contributing to it. So, but it did take 5 years of conversations to get to that point. And I would just say keep with it sometimes, and just keep going and keep having those conversations and keep turning up to, you know, almost the sort of, you know, the opening of an envelope. If there's a meeting to be had and they're talking about things, you know, you rock up and you have those conversations and you do celebrate. And I think there is something about putting yourself out there a little bit and celebrating what you do, using that social media platforms and talking to other people, going and talking to people like Jane who've been on that journey and shared that experience. And I think that's just a really important part of lifting others up as well. So yeah, it's good fun, but it can feel quite challenging sometimes when it goes on for a long time. But I just really wanted to share that. It's worth hanging on in there.
And I just want to share that it's amazing to see, because I was actually a part of the community art workshop all those years ago to help
5 years. Yes, 5 years ago. I know. But what I wanted to say is that ultimately the collaboration that's made that happen is with Devon County, City County, with the police, with some funding that came through the businesses. You know, the list goes on and on and on. And that was about constant conversations and challenge and sharing and all those kind of stuff and all the ideas. And eventually it's all kind of come together, and of course it's worth the pain and the wait and the hassle, but yeah, it's a good journey.
Excellent. Great. So I'm now gonna invite us